Have you thought of breaking through? Ain't it part of what you do? Catch a victim while he's dumb, break his larynx with your time, and it's time to get high. Well, this ain't no goddamn dream, it's exactly what it seems. Wake up today just to lay back down and say, I won't be coming back. Let's call it a heart attack. Give me some of that knack. This is just a final payback. They all flipped on me, took my passions, left me be. When I had a place to sit, a goddamn attitude to fit. Talk real smooth, knew where to spit. But things have changed and I have quit. Got nothing to look forward to but a backlash full of lies. You're too late for where you're going. This is fate, the whistle's blowing. It's much too late. It's all too late. You're much too late. Like a piss hole punk with his nose turned up and a fragrance all your own. Tell me what it's like to be alone. And let's not forget the skull-faced prick who offers fix to your face. He dropped out of the subhuman race. And it's sad. Boo-hoo-hoo. But I'm goddamn glad that piece of shit was just a fad. Tell me, boy, where were you? What's your story? I mean, really. Where have you been? Was it the big time and full of sin? Tell me what you saw, chasing dragons down the hall. So now I find you just the same, a generation full of games. I hear the whispers, I see traps to break my legs.
And welcome to another special edition of the Michael Decon program. I look forward to once again serve you those sounds of salvation. First time listeners turn on, tune in, and drop out. This is a very different kind of show. A place where we don't feel so alone. Let us chase away the light no matter what you at home choose to believe. I do admire you for your curiosity. Joining me tonight is Mr. Dr. Paul Cottrell. You know him well by now. He's been giving us the hard-hitting truth on this channel. We will also be joined by a first-timer. You might know him as Thomas, composer, plague historian, all-around internet darling. Give him a warm welcome. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me into your hearts and into your minds. Here we are again on a night like this. Hello to all of you in the chat room. I see you. For those that want to join in on the conversation, please remain calm. Eventually, you will be able to join us. Of course, hello to those in the future listening to the podcast rendition of this program. Check the description below this video for more details. My goodness, I want to thank all of you yet again for being here. This will be very fun. I had so many other things to say, but both men are waiting. Let's bring them in one at a time. And I think Thomas is back there coughing up a storm. Thomas, what's going on? Are you staying away from the coronavirus?
As best I can. Thank you for having me, Michael.
No problem. Let's bring in the doctor. Let me unmute him here and bring him up. Dr. Paul Cottrell, how's it going?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you once again for being a part of the program. It's always fun when you're here, Doc.
I like calling Callie.
For sure. And how have you been? Have you been sleeping, Paul? You know, I'm always worried about you.
Well, I'm sleep deprived, but I feel as though I have to do this. But it's wearing on me. It really is. And not just me, it's wearing on some of the other channels that have been producing a lot of the COVID-19 content like Peak Prosperity and Box Mining. They're even, saying they're stressed out and tired. It's daunting. It's a very daunting task.
You've been all over the place here.
Yeah.
All over YouTube, making these videos nonstop, and it's drawn quite speculation. There's lots of individuals out there who have been sort of wondering about you, Doc.
Yeah, well,
let
them wonder.
You know how they are online, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's the trolls. There's the ones that have cognitive dissonance. There's the individuals that want to put their head in the sand. And the premise that I have is that we have never seen anything like this ever in our lives, and the world is so interconnected now. It's much, much different than it was in 1918. And we need to really think about this for a real quick sec. I'll be short on this. But in 1882 was when electricity was invented by Thomas Edison. All right. And it was put into homes at about that time. So when 1918 happened with the Spanish flu, we only had electricity for 36 years, all right? And now speed all the way to where we're at right now in 2020, where we have nuclear power and all the interconnectedness the world is, that if certain things go down, huge infrastructures that need lots of people and a lot of material start to break down. Healthcare, the power grid, nuclear power. We may actually see a Chernobyl here in the United States if it tears through the economy and people can't go to work and can't get the material and the supply chain start to break down. It's not just a biological issue. I mean, we're going to see a major tear through of the economy. You're starting to see that with the S&P 500 blowing past the 200-day moving average in 1 week.
Yep.
But I mean, let the naysayers, say all they want. The reality is the reality, and it's creeping up. And and on your show, your show was one of the top 3 or 4 that I was on at the very beginning.
Very true. And all the things that you've been talking about, you've been right on the money, my friend. And by the way, I think Thomas wants to get in here. Thomas, did you have something to add? Go ahead. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, basically, I'm going to agree with Dr. Cottrell, and the stress that he's feeling is because he's got literally the weight of humanity on him for all noble reasons. In 1918, you're right, electricity was 36 years old. Right now, what would a Walmart look like without Chinese products? Because that's what's going to happen. We're going to go ahead and have a run on things like we've never seen. And then we're going to see rapid attrition on a societal level. And it's not just America. It has shown up. There were 2,000 new cases overnight. And that is in Tunisia. That is in Senegal. I assume it's going to be in Algeria, which means it'll march into France. The clarity of this is shocking. And Dr. Cottrell has been prescient in sounding the alarm when there was less than 200 deaths. So, kudos to you, Dr. Cottrell.
Well, I wish I was wrong. I mean, because I don't want people harmed. I don't. I mean, my whole premise was to try to save lives and to have people come together to try to help their neighbor. But the reality of the situation is in the numbers. If we go to the Johns Hopkins website, what they're publishing, and I believe they're publishing lower numbers than what they really are, but as of today, as of right now, over 93,000 people are confirmed with COVID-19. Okay, we believe that number is 10 or 20 times higher. So that's just what they're publishing right now. And the number of deaths is 3,162. We believe that's either 10 or 20 times higher. And the recovered is 48,327. Now we got to keep in mind, they have crematoriums running 24/7 in China. Well, if you're running 24/7 crematoriums in the Wuhan area, or or its province, you're going to have more than 3,000 deaths. You're going to be, your flow rate is close to 1,000 a day. So the death rate numbers are way too low. But the reality of the situation is we're starting to see it creep up. We're starting to see it creep up in the United States. We already have, as of right now, 122 cases that are confirmed with COVID-19. And we already have admission from the CDC that they really don't know how many numbers that we really have on the ground because they haven't been testing, because either the local municipalities don't have the test kits, or the doctors, when they fill out the paperwork to get the approval to have the CDC to test the test swabs, they deny the doctors. So we have a major cover-up going on in the CDC. So, I mean, and we have already 9 deaths.
Huge.
9 deaths in the United States.
Yeah.
Those are the numbers.
If I can weigh in, the tests themselves have a 30 to 50% accuracy rate. We've got asymptomatic patients, and then we've got a 15% reinfection that China just admitted to. So these are people who are deemed cured, and they go out and they're interacting with the public and with their families, and they're carriers. So we got a bunch of typhoid Marys. So you're exactly right, Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the CDC, Alex Azar, who's right under Pence. Alex Azar is kind of running the group, but for the task force. But then Pence is overseeing him and coordinating. But Alex Azar and even Nancy Messonnier basically, is basically saying, it's not that bad. Maybe we'll have some more numbers. But they're not. And then they say that it's a 14-day incubation, and it's way more than a 14-day incubation. And there's multiple cases where the quarantine was only 14 days, and they let them out in the public. Well,
it's crazy. And this thing,
So I mean, now we wonder why we're having all these deaths, and it's starting to sprout off. And Michael, I told you last week that I believe that the seed centers were going to be in California, and you're starting to see it.
That's right.
You're starting to see it right now.
Yeah, you've been dead on with a lot of the things you've been talking about, and it's been scaring me, to be honest with you. I stopped shaking hands with people about 4 to 6 months back, and some people were thinking maybe, perhaps it's a little rude to be doing that. I recall a friend of mine told me that, and I thought, I don't want to get sick. So, if you're gonna shake my hand, I'm gonna give you a fist bump. That's about it. It's no disrespect, but I mean, I'm not getting sick. I'm trying everything I can not to get sick. And just this morning, I woke up with a slightly scratchy throat, and I thought, oh shit, I'm dead.
Well, I'd attack that with that nano silver. Get some nano silver, Michael. Get some nano silver. Buy that nano silver gel or liquid. And start taking that now.
But to be honest with you, I've just been gargling warm water and salt and taking some medicine as well.
No. I that's good for the normal cold. You need that nano silver.
Yeah.
Do a rush order for nano silver. Either liquid or gel. It doesn't matter. But liquid for you would probably be better for just getting it down on the throat. But
I like to extrapolate on Dr. Cottrell's argumentation, which I think is right. There's 47.8 million elderly people in the United States, and that is where you're going to see die-offs. You're also going to see die-offs in prisons. It's going to impact public schools, social events. Our lifestyle, our GDP is 68% of our 68% of our GDP is consumerism. That's going to be affected. So you're going to see literal collapse.
Exactly. And, you just heard in the news today with Chairman Powell, who's the head of the Federal Reserve, cutting rates. Well, that's just to help the banks. It's not that the transmission mechanism is broken because people are not going to be buying. The only buying that they're doing is to stock their house with supplies. And that's it. And that's going to be short term. And then once there's a lockdown, it's just going to tear through the economy. So there's a transmission mechanism that's broken between the Federal Reserve and the every Joe economy. And it's only a quick bailout for the banks. We're going to see another leg down on the S&P 500.
Oh, huge. And it's, it went up 1,200. Everybody was celebrating. Then it was down 800 today. It's lower highs and lower lows. I have a question for you, Dr. Cottrell. You referenced the Spanish flu. So it first arose in January of 1918. They called it the 3-week fever. It was literally the first wave because it lasted from January to June 1918, and health officials declared it was over. But then, of course, it reared its head when winter came back, so October of 1918, and within a year, it killed more people than the Black Death of 1347 to 1352. Do you see this pandemic as having a first wave, a second wave, and a third wave?
Yes, I think that there will be a secondary and a tertiary wave. The question is, will it be worse or will it be attenuated? I think it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
But we don't know for sure. Because, when a virus goes through a population, sometimes through the mutations, it becomes less virulent. The replicates for viruses are not very good. So that's why there's lots of mutations that take place. And eventually the virus attenuates and starts to learn to live with its host or learn to live within the population. And it's similar to like flu, which is kind of like seasonal. But it's not but when it does that first jump between species, it's very virulent until it starts to attenuate. But who knows? I mean, we're worried about the cytokine storm on the second wave. But we don't know. Unfortunately, we're in what I call the fog of war. And this is where the quote scientists, they wait until there's so much data that it's already too late, when you're on the battle, you have to make decisions. Sometimes you have to, shoot first and aim later. You just have to knee-jerk react. And because if you don't, you're not protecting yourself. You're not protecting the herd. You're not protecting the society. Sometimes you have to overshoot and try to protect because of the unknown unknowns that we're dealing with. You have to err on the side of caution. In this case, is to hyper prepare. Because if you underprepare, you're way worse off.
Right. And that's something we talked about, Doctor, weeks ago, about being prepared for anything to come. And lots of people out there are already rushing to Costco or wherever they go shopping and stockpiling up already.
Right. I mean, I have a lot of people calling into my show that's overseas. And I'm having people sending me pictures, and some of it I post, but it's happening in France. It's happening in Germany, and it's happening in England, where there's the start of shortages. It's happening in Lower Manhattan, where I live, with some of the grocery stores. The certain food items are out of stock or about ready to go out of stock, and it's happening in New Jersey. Now, I'm sure it's also happening in other areas of the United States, probably Washington, Seattle, Washington, but it's starting. The shortages are starting, and they've been out of masks for a while. But now we're talking about food items.
Yeah.
And we've seen on mainstream news long lines of people at Home Depot or at Costco.
It's amazing, really.
And what is so insidious is that people have learned to treat the CDC as some religious figure, and they have dropped the ball right and left. So has the WHO. It's been horrible. And I've got another question for Dr. Cottrell, if I could.
Go ahead.
Okay. You've been on the money. It's been a prescient experience. I am reminded of Persia, which had a number of outbreaks. You had Constantinople and Turkey in 541 and 542 under Justinian and Theodora. And then you had, this is the reference that I'm making, you had something like London in 1665, where the officials thought it was more important to calm the populace than to actually sound the alarm. And that ended up very badly for them. They ended up, nailing one infected family member into their home along with their families, and everybody died. You see this thing getting to a point where they're going to have to do draconian martial law because of the chaos coming down the pike?
Yes, definitely. And that was one of my, early talks with Michael. I was concerned about this BioPatriot Act coming in and where it's like a FEMA camp, tertiary containment zones with the military, procurement of different food stocks, with certain suppliers. We hear that already.
Exactly.
There's a lot of power that HHS and the CDC has, where they can curtail our freedoms, our individual freedoms, and lock down the society. And I don't think most Americans realize that they have those powers. And then once they have that vaccine that's on the messenger RNA platform that doesn't have any long-term testing on efficacy, but let's just say it passes clinical trials. Is Americans willing to be force vaccinated? I mean, that's where we're going with this.
It seems like it.
The flu, the common flu, doesn't destroy the economy like what we're talking about right now. We are seeing the potentiality of another Lehman crisis happening, and
exactly.
The government is going to say, to prevent that kind of economic disaster to ever happen again, we're doing forced vaccination. And it opens up the door for what I've been screaming about from day one, is my worry about the BioPatriot Act.
Yeah, this
is like a 9/11. This is like a 9/11, a slow-mo 9/11 that's related to, a pathogen. But right after 9/11, it rolled into the Patriot Act and eroded our civil liberties. Well, something very similar is going to happen with our biological civil liberties. And we're going to be forced vaccinated and put into like FEMA camps.
I sure hope not.
Not to focus too much on my family history, but my family history came right out of the Holocaust. We know exactly what this means. I had uncles that were tattooed, and with the number.
That
and
I didn't
know.
My
grandmother's brother and mother died from the Holocaust. And I see this, coming in, and it screams to me, being a Jew, it screams to me that I got to do something to prevent this from happening. But I'm frustrated because I don't see my fellow citizens in the United States getting up and galvanizing, saying, "Hell no, we don't want this to happen."
Yeah,
it seems like we're like sheep being
there's enough death
herded in.
Yeah. Right now, they're in a state of denial. And the thing about it, here's my next question, Dr. Cottrell, is do you believe that this is a bioweapon and it has been launched at China because it would cause economic collapse in the United States? Therefore, they use China as a proxy, knowing that we're so dependent on it.
Well, there is that working theory out there. This is where I'm at with this, just to be short with it. I believe it was a biological engineered virus. I can prove it in 3 different vectors. One vector is through the genomics and, the bioinformatics side of it to prove that it was bioengineered. The probability of it being zoonotic is so low that it's so impossible. And then if you look at the research that goes all the way back to 2010, you can see how they were building up the virus. And you can see the logical steps that were being taken to build up the virus to study it in the bat host. because that's its natural host for SARS. They were trying to come up with
Exactly.
therapeutics for SARS. So because it's so virulent, it had to be in the P4 lab or BSL. We have it also in BSL-4 labs in the United States.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and you know where a lot of those virologists were trained?
My working hypothesis.
They were trained in Lyon.
You gentlemen were talking over each other, one at a time.
I'm sorry. Go on, Doctor.
All right. So my working hypothesis is this: that it was accidentally leaked out of the P4 facility because of bad safety protocols. I think, though, that I believe that the CIA is using this as leverage to pull down the CCP. They're taking it as using it as an advantage to try to overthrow President Xi. But I don't believe that it was purposely let out, because anyone that lets it out on purpose, they know they can't control it. There's no way that they can control it. You can't control it by a biological pathogen like that. It'll infect everybody.
Yeah, I agree, Doctor. And for the audience, BSL-4, that's a biosafety lab 4, which is the highest containment safety measures. And the Wuhan facility, 60% of their staff were trained in Lyon. It was designed by France, and there's a little bit more. When they were testing things, as you know, Doctor, you can reactivate viruses. And so what I understand is that they were taking soil samples from Parc des Brutes, Chaumont, which is where the Temple of Vestas is. It's a beautiful little island in Paris. And this is an island that had a plague hospital in the 17th century. So they were testing that soil. It's also where they had a Gibet. They were hanging people. So when there are experiments to try to mitigate emerging viruses, sometimes they dig into the past. They've gone into the tundra in Siberia, and they've reactivated viruses 30,000 years old. So we're playing with fire, and I think this thing is going to be huge. This is going to be huge. I think it's as bad as you say. Here
to prove your point. I totally agree with you. To prove your point is that because it was bioengineered, I believe, for scientific purposes, not for a bioweapon, but that doesn't mean you can't use it as a bioweapon.
Absolutely.
But for scientific purposes, and it's super virulent. It's designed to be super virulent. And because of that, it supercharged the replicase area of the genome, and it supercharged the spike protein where it attaches to the ACE2. So this thing, and it has HIV homology in the spike protein. So who knows what it's doing to our white blood cell count. But the thing is that it was supercharged, and it had to be in, a level 4, facility, for safety. This is a lot different than the zoonotic situation that we had with the Spanish flu. And so we supercharged something for scientific purposes, and it's now out. So the best that we have to compare to modern day is the epidemiological curves that happen with the Spanish flu of 1918, because this is way worse than SARS. This is way worse than Ebola, way worse than MERS, and way worse than influenza in terms of death ratio.
Way worse.
So the best that we have is to use the proxy of the Spanish flu of 1918 as how it went through around the world. But the thing is things are different. We supercharge the virus. We have a much more integrated world with travel, and a lot more than we had in 1918. We have world travel is much larger now. We have many more people. We live in much denser populations. Have more metropolises than we had back in 1918, and people, I think, are sicker now. than they were in 1918 because they didn't have the GMO foods and the huge high blood pressure problems, the diabetes and all this. So modern society has made our society sicker. So when this thing starts tearing through the United States, anyone that has these underlying conditions, medical conditions, are at risk of dying from this.
Absolutely.
That's a real possibility. That and even Pre-Prosperity said this on his show. If you have an underlying condition like obesity, heart disease, kidney problems, pulmonary issues, and you get Wuhan or COVID-19, you have a big chance of heart failure. That explains that sudden drop that we're starting to see in the media. Where the people just drop, and become unconscious.
Yeah, it's attacking the nervous system, doctor.
It's sudden death. It's sudden death.
Right. The nervous system is shot from this, right, doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big problem. So I think people need to realize that there is some similarities to the 1918 situation, but we have a different dynamic. And they didn't have nuclear power in 1918. We have nuclear power now. And if the supply chains break down and we can't control those cooling stations, and people get sick and they can't get in, to work to run those power plants, the nuclear power plants, we may have a meltdown.
Chernobyl.
And no one's talking about that. No one from the energy department is saying, you know what, we're on it. Don't worry about the nuclear power. We're watching it. Okay, no one's saying that. And that's a big concern because we can have Spanish flu of 1918, Lehman, and Chernobyl all in the same year.
The government never tells us the truth. Look at Fukushima. They told us about the cesium that was airborne, but they didn't tell us too much about the strontium-90 crawling the seafloor. Now, as far as 1918, the world population was 1.5 billion. 30% of us were infected. And of that, you had 50 to 70 million dead. We're looking at a case fatality rate right now that they admit to of 3.5%. Spanish flu was 2.5. So you're dead on the money. This is more than a pandemic. This is a super pandemic that can collapse our nation.
Yeah. And it's a set of dominoes to fall that people intuitively wouldn't think are connected until after it happens. Same thing happened with Lehman. Everyone was saying it was subprime. Don't worry about the prime borrowers. But then we realized everything's interconnected with the economy. Well, everything's interconnected with the real economy, not just the financial economy. All right. If you have your supply chain start to break down, serious infrastructure starts to break down. And some of that infrastructure is really deadly, like nuclear power. And people aren't listening to that. Or what happens if the water system starts to break down? And we start to have, disease just through the water supply.
That'd be awful. And by the way, doctor, I gotta ask you this, doctor. Since we last talked, there's been information coming out of South Korea where the coronavirus is linked to this Christian death cult. I'm not quite sure if you've been following along with that, doctor. The Shincheonji Church of Jesus, ran by its leader Lee Man-hee.
I heard that it was a religious institution that had a congregation of people and that's how it spread. But I didn't know it was a death cult. I didn't know that. I mean, that's news to me that it was a death cult. But here's the problem: is that people need to realize that these mass congregations is going to spread the disease. We should have never had the Super Bowl. They should not have the Olympics, and we should not be, having these, stadium gatherings, like soccer or baseball or football or whatever.
Are they still doing the
hockey.
Olympics there, Paul?
Well, the Olympics is still on.
It's still scheduled. Oh my!
for Japan, but that might get canceled. Who
It
knows?
should be canceled.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
And since we're
But
talking about this,
here's an interesting thing.
Go ahead.
When I was, because I'm living in Manhattan, and I was in Manhattan during Hurricane Sandy. That happened just a couple days or so before they were supposed to do the New York Marathon, and all the marathon runners were complaining. Not all, but a lot were complaining that they had to cancel the marathon because they trained all year for it. Meanwhile, you had half of New York, underwater. So it's just like some people are so egocentric that it doesn't register that how bad things can be for people, and they look at their own little world, and if it's not affecting them directly, they think it's not happening, and that's my concern. I've been trying to, sound the alarm as like Paul Revere, the virus is coming, is coming, and you got to be prepared and work together. But honestly, in the fifth week, the 6th week, whatever it is. But right now, the last 2 days, I've been actually depressed about this.
I hear you.
I don't feel as though the American people really have the fortitude to be able to work together to make sure that all these concerns that we're talking about, making sure that your neighbors are taken care of, making sure that you're prepared, making sure that you don't, have this top-down government that we've been talking about on your show, making sure that the BioPatriot Act isn't coming in, making sure that the infrastructure doesn't falter. Right now, I'm at a point where I don't think the American public can get their head out of the
Dr.
butt
Cottrell,
to really
I'm
solve
going to
this
correct
problem.
you. Okay, you're making a huge impact. Number one, huge. I have a friend of mine named Ryan. He's an endocrinologist. He's in New York. When I first showed him your show, this is mid-January, he said, "Oh, he's a catastrophic thinker." He now is addicted to it. He thinks you're right on the money. You're making a huge difference. So it may be depressing because it's so daunting, but you're a blessing to the world.
Yeah, that was my dog. Sorry.
That's all right.
but yeah, I just, my dog's even stressed out.
The dog's stressed out. My God.
Yeah.
Poor dog.
But yeah.
Yeah, but so look at your numbers. You've got a huge following, and literally they are apostles. They're telling their families. You're making a huge impact, and it's going to continue to grow as things get more draconian. By Cinco de Mayo, this is 8 weeks from now, you're going to see chaos. That's what's coming down the pike.
Yeah.
You'll see collapse. We're 8-9 weeks away.
By the way, Doctor, I got to ask you really quickly here.
I personally. Oh, okay.
I just wanted to quickly add, since we're talking about different countries being affected, what do you make of Africa's low coronavirus rate?
Well, it might be because of, not testing enough.
Do you think that's what's going on?
I think that's a big part of it.
I see.
I mean, they already have some, epidemic with the Ebola right now in Kenya, in the Kenya area. That's been going around for a minimum 6 months. And I believe also around Zimbabwe. I haven't been focused on the Ebola outbreak there, but I mean, it's been going around, Africa. Not a lot of people want to travel to Africa for different reasons, but, so it's not like a big hub. It's not like going to Italy or going to China.
Right.
So I can, because of that, it wouldn't surprise me that continent is late to the party. But it doesn't mean that it won't, go through the continent
eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Their healthcare isn't as well as ours. So the early cases are probably going to be deeper pneumonia type cases. Well, our cases are going to be somewhat mild at the beginning, but once the healthcare starts to break down, if your first responders start to get sick or they run out of supplies, you don't have 21st century medicine. You have 17th century medicine. And
exactly. You better bring out the leeches.
So Africa is already in 17th century medicine. So they're probably going to have the deep scarring, and the death rates might be actually higher in Africa. But because I don't think that there's a lot of conductivity between nations, going through Africa as much as other nations, it doesn't surprise me that the spread is slower at this moment in time. It will take through that continent.
Yeah, eventually it will reach there. And of course, Paul, I had to mention recently I heard you going off on Alex Azar, which I could feel your frustration from here. You were fired up, Doctor.
Yeah, well, sometimes you know what? Sometimes my channel is like what people are saying in their living room, but I'm willing to film myself doing what people are saying to their TV in the living room.
Right.
A lot of people are seeing a lot of stupidity going on with our government. Government officials are individuals that are running these health departments, and a lot of Americans are saying the same thing I am, and they're frustrated. And I'm sleep deprived, and I feel as though not enough people are standing up and getting involved to trying to help their community and reach out to their representatives saying, you're not going down that BioPatriot Act road. Trust me, you're not going down there. There's just not enough people galvanized. I have a lot of people listening, a lot of people agreeing, but not enough people doing. So, getting frustrated, it's partially to try to galvanize other people to get involved, but also to vent my frustration that I'm seeing, because I see a lot of people that they have cognitive dissonance. That's what's going to kill people, literally kill people, by being cognitively, having cognitive dissonance. I mean, I sound hyperbolic when I'm saying that I'm speaking with lots of hyperbole, but I'm not. People will die if they don't act. And I've been saying that from day one.
Yeah. And the problem is that we've politicized this thing, both political parties blaming the other. Meanwhile, they're using the CDC for political purposes. And my feeling is it has to get visceral. You have to have known someone who has died of it, and that is going to be the motivator. Right now, they've got the TV yapping at them saying, "Oh well, the common flu is deadlier." No, it's not. The CFR rate is 3.5 on this thing. It's 0.1 for the common flu. So they're going to know it. And I'm telling you, this is my prediction. 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to start to see numbers really climb, fatalities. And they're probably going to try to cover that up because they don't want panic, but they won't be able to. It's too big.
Here's my prediction, okay? We've already passed the 100 mark. We're at 122, right? We know that there's not enough test kits available. Once the test kits are available, I already believe that there are there are either 1,000 or maybe up to 3,000 cases roaming around that have COVID-19 right now in the United States. Once they have those test kits, and in high density populations, they're testing 1,000 a day. You're gonna start seeing, that's about in a week. You're going to start seeing huge numbers in the United States. So we're at 122 right now. And it's Tuesday. By the end of Saturday night, I'm willing to bet that we're over 500. And by the end of next week, we're over 1,000. We're like 1,500.
Easily, yeah.
It's just going to double.
This thing's going to climb fast,
exactly right.
Because we'll eventually have the test kits available, and we got to remember, what are the two bottleneck points at this moment in time? The doctors can't test because they don't have the test kits, and if they send the samples to the CDC, they have to have the permission of the CDC to send the samples. And many doctors, and they've even said this on CNBC yesterday, many doctors are getting denied to send the samples to the CDC. So the CDC has been suppressing the numbers through two different ways. Not enough test kits on the ground, and not allowing the doctors to send the samples to the CDC.
But Doctor,
so, I mean, we're going to see these numbers really climb once they start testing on site.
But Doctor, aren't you relieved that we have Mike Pence handling everything?
No, not really.
I have
Not really at all. I mean, you know,
Well,
but so your listeners know, you know,
Yes.
you know, I'm not going off on Trump's
Oh,
administration.
of course not. Of course not.
I'm not going on because I'm actually a Trump supporter. I voted for Trump for his first term. I will vote for Trump on his second term. All right, but I honestly believe, and as you know, Michael, I mean, there's certain things that I'll say on my channel that I think they're going off the wrong direction,
That's
and
okay.
I'll say it,
And that's fine. Yeah.
With full heart, right?
Right.
But in this particular case, I think Donald Trump and his administration and all of the government has failed miserably. And it's costing people's lives, and is unforgivable. It's not about politics. It's about competency and transparency, and we're not seeing that with our government at this moment in time. I can do a better job than Alex Azar, because we talked on your show that we need to empower the mayors and the first responders to make the decisions and not have the decision making at the CDC. The only thing the federal government should get involved with is make sure that they print the money to send it to the states so they can distribute it to the first responders to make sure that they have all the material that they need, and keep those doctors and nurses healthy. Because if that A team falls, we have 17th century medicine. And no one has gone up to the American public and said that. And that's why I think Alex Azar and Mike Pence are being disingenuous.
Do you think perhaps the reason why they are being so laid back about it is because they don't want to cause a quote unquote panic?
I think that they want to mean there's two points here. They don't want to cause panic, but it's for two reasons. One, they don't want to have massive hoarding and have a collapse of stocks of food stocks.
Yeah.
Then there is the economy. There's the financial markets, because the banking industry is very weak, so they're afraid of the stock market collapsing. And if the stock market collapses, it's going to cause a lot more. There's going to cause layoffs. It's going to cause bank illiquidity issues. You already saw, the Federal Reserve pumping in money into the financial system because they're worried. But again, there's no transmission mechanism for the regular economy. That bailout was 100% for the bankers to make sure that they can, handle their loan payments. Because you got to remember, some of their assets are in the stock market, and when the stock market's going down, their balance sheet goes down. So their ability to pay off current loans amongst each other goes down. And we already know that there's stress in the repo market. So that's another sign that they keep the banks afloat. They got to tell the American public that everything's fine.
Yeah, and if I can weigh in.
Go ahead.
The 29 crash was caused by a bond dislocation. The 2000 crash was caused by subprime. What we're looking at right now is we still have, trillions of dollars in a derivative bubble. And if the stock market descends to the point where it breaks, they won't be able to recover it through quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they can fire up the printing presses. They won't be able to, because it's going to be too fast a drop. The Great Depression had roughly 25% depression or unemployment. With the 2008 Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, we had a subsidized depression with maybe 17 or 18% unemployment. Everybody looked at the three number instead of the real number, which is people who weren't counted as unemployed. They looked at the U3 instead of the U6, and so. Dr. Cottrell's right. They're looking at their own collapse of at multinational companies. There's a political angle, right, which is crazy, and then you've got chaos. You literally have people running amok, not knowing what to do. I personally think that we're going to go back into consulting the village witch, right? And small businesses were kind of like local honey. I think cities are going to be petri dishes. Seriously, Chicago, Cleveland, high density cities, LA. Look at Long Beach. That is probably an infection point right now, and they still have huge liners coming in from China.
I told you about
the surfaces.
I told you about that, right?
Ripe with these viruses. No, you didn't.
I thought I had mentioned about the Long Beach port there and the employee that I know out there. I thought we talked about this, but maybe I'll keep that private for right now until I have until I could actually verify more of this. But there's been a lot of information coming out.
I have a lot of stuff going on, behind the scenes. People could, call and here is the beauty of, and I mentioned this in one of my videos, the beauty of Alan Greenspan. No matter if you liked Alan Greenspan or not, running the Federal Reserve and it started during Reagan and it went all the way through to Bush Jr. But Alan Greenspan was a genius in one regard. He had a big consulting company before he became the federal chair, the federal chairman. And that consulting company had across the nation lots of people in his Rolodex that he could call and get on the ground information on what was going on in the economy. And he used his contacts as a set of data points before the Bureau of Statistics, Labor and Statistics came out, so he could kind of compare. So he had leading data coming from his contacts in his Rolodex, and then the lagging data that was coming from the Bureau of Statistics. All right. And he always leaned on his contacts as being fresher data. All right. So we don't have that at the CDC. And on my channel, I literally have tons of people calling me, telling me what is going on the ground. First responders, people that know people that are sick, that are starting to show the signs of COVID-19. So I'm starting to get a picture across the country, not just in these little seed centers, but across the country in almost every state. I have a story to tell at the ground level, but the CDC, it's not matching what the CDC and Alex Azar is saying. And Alex Azar is like, well, the CDC only, is showing only 122. No. If you listen to the ground like Alan Greenspan did for the economy when he was Fed chair, you would really understand what's going on. And it's a very simple concept. Yeah. Talk to the first have the knowledge. And he's not doing that. And
this is the problem, which is you've got this behemoth, you've got this large governmental theropod, for lack of a better word. They're not reacting quickly. They're moving close. They're moving like they're in quicksand. So you're right. Greenspan also was a taciturn man who would say two words to calm the markets: irrational exuberance. Right. Remember that one? Right. He had it going on. You were right.
But, he was the Wizard of Oz.
You're right.
For sure, but.
Yeah, he was. He was. I'm an old guy. I'm dating myself, as you can probably tell. But you're right. And I'm telling you, a lot of people are turning in to your show because you're the only guy out there with the bona fides who's sounding the alarm. I can't think of anybody else with a background in epidemiology who's saying anything. They're asleep at the wheel.
Well, here's the problem: is the scientific community. See, what I'm bringing to the table is multiple disciplines. I mean, I'm educated in multiple disciplines. I'm educated in the biological discipline. I'm educated in the engineering discipline, mechanical engineering. I used to be an automotive engineer from Detroit, and in the financial discipline. So I can see it from different angles. Most people, they get educated in one discipline and that's it. And that's what I bring to the table is a different perspective, a more holistic perspective. And that's why I can come up with, and converse like this. It's not just epidemiology. It's not just genomics. Yeah. It's also the economy and everything that's connected to it. and my systems engineering background, where I can make these connections and see system failure happening. But all the trolls out there, or all the people that have cognitive dissonance, they don't want to pay attention. I am begging people to get involved and help your neighbor and be prepared and get educated about some of the homeopathic remedies or the herbal remedies, because you may not be able to get to a doctor when the system fails. And people just think, this is like SARS, or this is like, that Ebola thing that happened a few years ago. I called my father on Friday. Okay. He's 77 years old. My mother's 73. My mother has severe COPD. She's a long time, 40 some year smoker.
Oh my.
Never stopped. All right. She's had 4 or 5 heart attacks. But she's had the stents, so to help the blockage.
Yeah.
But she has severe pulmonary issues. Severe. It's like talking to Darth Vader. All right. And my father is relatively healthy, but he has elevated blood pressure because he's 77 years old. But it's somewhat controlled. It's not that bad. All right. So he's relatively healthy. But if my mother got this, she would be dead. She'd be dead.
Yeah, her
she
immune
has
system.
No chance whatsoever to survive this. My father, on the other hand, could maybe survive, but because of his age, he may not. But my mother, if she got this, for sure, she would be dead.
Understood.
Is your doctor or is your father an ectomorph? Is he thin? Does he exercise?
Yeah. I mean, he does. During the summer, he walks maybe 2 miles a day. In the winter, he doesn't walk that much.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's at the right weight of his age. I mean, but his age though, puts him in a risk category. But my mother, because of her pulmonary issues, she gets this, she's dead. She's dead. And there's a lot of people in America that fall in this category. Oh, and she also has diabetes, so that adds to the complication.
Yeah, that's
I got
not
a funny
good.
story, guys. So,
go ahead.
My uncle was the former president of the American Heart Association. He was a pretty well-known cardiologist out of Chicago, and he lived to be 94. The last 5 years of his life, he ate a steak every night. He said, "To hell with it. I made it to 89. Something's going to get me."
Sure.
he made it to 94. Yeah, pretty funny.
A lot of it's genetics, a lot of it's, exercise related. There's a lot to be said about living local, localization versus globalization. People that eat local honey have a tendency to be healthier because you have your local antigens, and that ingesting those local antigens through the honey because of the bee pollen, it stimulates at a low concentration your immune system. So when you are outside, your body's somewhat used to those antigens floating around. You don't get allergies. But because everything's global, you're buying honey from Poland and you live in New Jersey. And so you don't have that localization, immunology effects that are, like my grandmother or my great grandmother may have had. So globalization is not where it's at when it comes to, when it comes to overall health. It's almost as if
I have a prediction.
It's almost as if we've been playing with fire. We've been playing with fire on many different levels, with nuclear power, with bioengineering, with overconsumption,
With everything.
and nature is coming back with a vengeance, and it's wiping the board clean and saying, hey, I kept on telling you, I kept on warning you, I kept on warning you. This is what Mother Nature's saying. I kept on warning you. You didn't. Damn.
Definitely.
She punishes us.
Yeah.
And doctor, I got to ask you, your prediction in the next 6 months, do you see parts of America being quarantined and mandatory vaccinations being implemented? What's your take?
The quarantining is already starting. So we're already there. But mass quarantining, like at the FEMA camp level,
Yes.
I think is not. I think that's 4 weeks away.
Well, I know FEMA's getting ready for sure. There was all sorts of rumbles about
but
it.
These tertiary military, military quarantine, that's 4 weeks away. I think on average, the medical system is going to collapse in 8 weeks on average. But some locales will survive past 8 weeks, and other locales will fail earlier than 8 weeks. But on average, in the United States, you're going to have a big section of those first responders getting sick, and it's going to collapse.
Yeah,
That's
it's
8
interesting.
weeks away.
Yeah, it's interesting when Twitter starts telling its employees that to stay home.
Yeah, well,
there's a lot more
so in 8 weeks, it's going to be really bad in the United States. Now, in terms of forced vaccinations, they're not going to be able to do forced vaccinations until a year from now, because it won't be ready.
Right? It's not enough
At best, you're going to have clinical trials 2 finished by the end of the year. At best, assuming that everything goes okay, because they're at the animal model right now. They're not to the point where they're going to do it. We still have 2 months away before we do clinical trial 1, and then they do clinical trial 2, and then clinical trial 3. And if everything passes through that, then it can go to the masses. You're talking, mid next year before a vaccine for the masses are available.
Wow.
But by then, that's plenty of time for Congress to start writing bills like the BioPatriot Act to say, if you want a job, you have to have vaccines.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
That's what I'm afraid of.
You're going to have to show a vaccine ID card.
Yeah, or something similar. Yeah.
Good Lord, I sure hope that doesn't happen.
And 620,000 Americans died in the Civil War. 675,000 died with the 1918-1919 Spanish influenza. So you can just imagine what the numbers could be here now. And we didn't even get the brunt of it. It was Europe.
Right. Well, the Spanish flu was zoonotic. The interconnectivity of the world was less. We have a hyper-connected world now, and we designed it, meaning the human race. The human race designed this virus. So the dynamics are going to be, and it was designed to be very virulent.
It's interesting that so Michael, you probably know this. Zoonotic is a animal to human transfer. However, the virus is connected to live on the fur of your pet and on the surface of your food and, on canned goods and all that. It's crazy. I mean, this is a widowmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they want you to shave your face.
What was that?
I said that's why they want you to shave your beard.
Yeah. Well, when Chernobyl happened and people were being evacuated, relatives would not allow them in their homes unless they shaved their head off. Shave the hair off their head, all their body hair.
Wow,
because
really?
what happens is that the body hair is radioactive.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I didn't know that.
And then why? Yeah, and then so what you do is you scrub your skin really hard to try to get all that dead cells off, and then those cells are radioactive. They go, and the dead skin goes into a bag, and then you shave your hair, all your body hair, even your eyelashes, and then put that in the bag, and then you dispose of it in a nuclear waste. But I mean, it was because if you didn't, everything you were around that you touch becomes radioactive.
Very interesting.
But people don't realize.
Very interesting.
Just imagine what happens if we have a Chernobyl because of a breakdown in our supply chain, or the people that work there are so sick they can't get to the reactor to run it.
Yeah, we're screwed if all this happens. I mean, just look what happened during Hurricane Katrina and the way people behaved.
Yeah.
Think about it like
exactly.
that. Yeah. Except in a more massive scale.
We had a good economy. That's what's so scary.
Not anymore.
We're not going to have a good. This is what Paul was saying, which is if things are breaking down economically, on top of a Chernobyl, we're screwed. End of story. We're screwed.
It's an extinction. We're talking about an extinction event here for certain countries.
Yeah.
I still believe that this is a terroristic act, and I'm sure Paul believes that too.
A terrorist,
could very well be.
Terrorist act.
I believe it is.
Well,
that life expectancy,
Michael, I don't want to go down that road because it's so dark.
It is very dark.
Who did it? Who did it? Yeah. Why?
Well, I mean, it was linked to a Christian death cult, doctor. So, I mean, I'm thinking perhaps this was intentional.
Well, at P4, we know it left the P4 facility. For me, 65% of my brain is saying it was accidentally leaked out. There's 35% that says that it was purposely leaked out. Now, the question is, why was it purposely leaked out? Was it purposely leaked out by the CCP to do their own calling of their population? And they didn't care if, other people in the world were going to die, because their thinking was, well, we infect our people first. Around the world, they're infected later. We'll heal quicker, and then we'll take advantage while they're sick. That's one line of thinking.
That is one line of thinking.
Or did the CIA link it out?
It's possible.
Thinking, we'll knock out the CCP.
The thing is, doctor, people
not carrying the contagion.
Some folks just want to watch the world burn, though, doctor. You know that.
Well, yeah, you got the, there's the biological arsonists out there,
Definitely.
You're right. I mean,
keep that in mind.
That's such a dark path to try to follow, that rabbit hole. It's scary. And I'm not so sure that if you get to the end of that path, if you stay sane, I don't know. The kindness in my heart is hoping that it was accidentally leaked.
I'm hoping it's an accident too.
If it was purposely leaked, we're talking serious problems. Now, I mean, we're in serious problems now, but a purpose leak, you're talking like a magnitude way more than what I'm talking. And it's bad enough what I'm saying.
The government in 1918 prohibited funerals over 15 minutes with the Spanish flu.
Really?
So, this is just one little tiny measure that would happen. But we had a economy that was robust because we had built up a war machine. Wars tend to be good for economies, as we all know. We're not ready for this. We're obese. We've got high blood pressure. As Dr. Cottrell says, we're dependent upon pills to make us happy, to make us sad, to keep us alive. We're weak from a physiological point of view. So I'm really concerned.
You should
I'm
be.
an old guy. I'm almost 60. I turned 60 in June, and I thought I'd seen it all. I don't think I've seen anything remotely like this.
You got to be more concerned than we do because your older age and your immune system, my friend.
Yeah, I'm pretty tough. I've been shot. I've been stabbed.
You've been shot
around the world.
Good Lord.
It's a long story, but I've been on digs in Montpellier and in Spitalfield in London, and I even think that the Black Death probably started out as a phage event rather than a germ-negative event, just by the clarity of it. It marched 7 to 14 miles a day, and of course, as the immune system is compromised, Dr. Cottrell can probably agree with me, that's where you have pneumonic fever and bubonic plague and whatnot. It's a weakened immune system that that is where the opportunistic diseases come in, and that's what we're dealing with coronavirus. We got 47 million elderly. Yeah, exactly. So, there's
the second wave of this virus, but there's also a second wave of other pathogens because we'll have a weakened immune system after we survive this. So there may be, some outbreak of some other pathogen that we got to deal with.
Exactly. And to that point, if you look at Mexico, the history books say when Hernan Cortez came in 1519, he brought smallpox. That's true. But they had one plague outbreak in 1545 and then another one in 1576. It took the population from, in 1 century, from 20 million Mexicans, indigenous Mexicans, to 2 million. And this was more of a hemorrhagic, embolic, bleeding from the nose and ears and whatnot. But it was probably local. It had probably come from the mining and came from rats that were, virus ridden. But Dr. Cottrell's right. And look, I'd love to see you with the Trump administration. I'm going to vote for him again too. He needs a guy like you in there, really, to make things happen.
I would serve my country in any capacity that I can. But here's the problem. People like me, they don't want to listen to, because I tell them how it is. They should be like, for example, they should be stopping short selling. Like, the very first thing I would do if I was right next to Pence is say, okay, we're going to be transparent with the CDC. All right, we're going to empower the first responders because they have the education and the know-how to mash unit this stuff to help their local situation, and empower the mayors.
Yeah.
The federal government makes sure that the first responders have all the supplies that they need and are protected. They can't fall. That line cannot fall. Then you go with the FTC and say all short selling is done. No short selling in the market, period, until this pandemic's over. So anyone that's short, their position is closed automatically by the exchanges. So they'll stop the bleed in the stock market. Then you basically tell the banks that any foreclosures because of this event, any foreclosures on homes or car loans or credit cards, people getting behind on credit card payments because people are going to get laid off, or people that are in quarantine can't get to work and they don't get paid. So there's a moratorium on any foreclosures. And if the banks have a problem with that, you say you lose your bank license. And then on top of that, we start a process where we start breaking down the banks for them to be smaller, so they're not as fragile. Because the problem with the banks is they're too big. So every time they get into trouble, they can bring down the economy. And Volcker, with the Volcker rule, was trying to do that, but he was outvoted because of the powers that be. So to solve this problem, you have to attack it you have to attack the CDC. You have to empower the first responders. You have to be more transparent to the American public. You have to go against the banking industry. And, that you're talking about,
that's a death
when
sentence.
You start doing that, most people in politics are afraid to touch those rails.
No, you can't go there.
Because they're all electric.
Yeah.
You can't mess with the bank.
Yeah,
for sure.
You're right.
And
but that's the answer, because these people are going to start losing people are going to get laid off, and they're going to start. That's why I keep on saying this is another Lehman with this is 1918 Spanish flu plus Lehman, maybe with Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
He's
Thomas.
exactly right. Do you remember when Nancy Pelosi stood there and shook and said, "Oh, we need to, come up with this money right away"? That all went to the banks, as Dr. Cottrell was saying earlier. It didn't go to the people. It was the pain was 80% people, 20% banks. They wanted to save Bank of America because it had 6,000 boxes. Right now, Chase Bank is 45% bigger than it was in 2008. This is the people count. What about the goddamn people?
Exactly. We need that. We need that Roosevelt moment where we trust bust, and that trust busting is of the banking industry now. That's what's needed.
I agree.
By the way, I got some audio here of Mike Pence. Let's roll the audio. I believe you'll be able to hear this too, Doctor.
Me to address an issue that I know is on the hearts and minds of people all across this country, the potential impact of the coronavirus here in America. President Donald Trump has no higher priority than the health, safety, and well-being of the American people. Last month, following word of the outbreak of the coronavirus in China, President Trump took unprecedented action to protect the health of Americans. He declared a public health emergency. We suspended travel to the United States from China. We initiated quarantine efforts for American citizens returning and established a White House coronavirus task force, which has literally met every single day to protect the American people. As of today, we have 15 cases of coronavirus that have been detected in the United States, with only one new case detected in the last 2 weeks. There's another 45 cases that have been diagnosed among Americans who've been repatriated from China. And while one American is hospitalized, thankfully, all the patients have been treated and are doing well. While the risk to the American public remains low, as the president said yesterday, we're ready. We're ready for anything. Yesterday, President Trump directed me to lead a whole-of-government approach to address the coronavirus in this country. And I promise you, we will continue to bring the full resources of the federal government to bear to protect the American people.
And there was Mike Pence a few days ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I commented on my show, a little bit flamboyantly
That's right.
about that. I don't believe that they really care about the American public's health over the banking system. I think they're focused on the economy and protecting the banks, and I think that's very self-evident. I think it's disingenuous, saying it mildly, being very disingenuous to the American public when they state these low numbers when you're not even tested for COVID-19 because they don't have the kits, and the CDC is denying the doctors for sending samples to the CDC for testing. So it's a deflated number on purpose.
Yeah.
But people like you and I that are talking about it, daily, we know what's going on behind the scenes, but the average public isn't. They're just taking it face value. Oh, the numbers are low and, maybe we'll be okay. But the reality is the numbers are low because they're not testing, and there are people walking around with it. And you can pass this on when you're symptomatic or asymptomatic. And on top of that, we look at the data for influenza that CDC publishes, and you compare last year's influenza numbers and influenza-like numbers just in New York alone. And you see a huge spread difference. But this year's numbers for influenza or influenza-like, aka COVID-19, is much higher than last year. So what's the difference between this year and last year? Well, the last thing I noticed was it's COVID-19. So I mean, it's not a leap of you have to be an intellectual genius to realize that the CDC is purposely keeping the numbers down. And Mike Pence, pats the back of Trump, saying he's such a great guy and he really cares about everybody. And in reality, I think that he's dropped the ball. The whole administration, the whole government has dropped the ball.
Oh, they dropped the ball for sure.
Yeah, and what he's doing is a fireside chat approach, not realizing that we were 40 months into a full crash when FDR in 33 started the fireside chats. So he's trying to be preemptive, and all he's doing is raising eyebrows, in my opinion. This guy, when he was asked by someone, well, what about Disneyland? He said, well, wash your hands. Right now, Disneyland is the single biggest employer in Florida, and they've shut down 3 of 6 theme parks. So, this is going to get a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Americans have never seen anything like this before. And unfortunately, Americans have been somewhat safe for the last, let's say, since 1940s. Okay, right after World War II, America hasn't really been at risk, real risk. 9/11 was a little scary, but it wasn't really at risk. This is the first time where Americans actually could die from something across the country, not just a little terrorist attack, but across the country. And we're talking in the millions, being infected.
Yeah, tens of
And
millions.
having or
If you look at
tens
the elderly,
being infected and having a 3% or 5% kill ratio.
Yeah. It's messed up, and I don't think they're going to wake up until it's up close and personal, whether they've had a friend, a spouse, a family member, and it's going to be, hey, little Mikey, you're okay, but sorry about Grandpa. I think that's what it's coming down to.
Yeah. I just like.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's sad. I'm really. And that's why the last 2 days I've been a little bit depressed about this and have I don't know, a low opinion of, let's say, the American spirit, because I just am very shocked that we did not galvanize 4 weeks ago or even 3 weeks ago, and made our representatives more accountable and more responsive and more proactive.
Well, don't be
what we have right now.
Well, don't
we
feel
should have shut down.
defeated,
We should have shut down all airlines going in to the country a long time ago. We still haven't done that. And you could easily, people would say, well, that would slow down the economy, and maybe there would be a bankruptcy on the airlines. The federal government could come in and give them federal loans and say, you ground the planes, we're not, and you won't go bankrupt. You're going to get federal aid. Don't worry about it. All right. It's that simple. Yeah. It's like a war powers emergency act that's in the power of the president. Why he didn't do that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why did he keep on letting planes coming in and it keeps on infecting? And if he did that, even if he did that 2 days ago, when he did that speech, or 3 days ago, then that individual flying in from Iran would not have been in Manhattan.
Yep.
I shouldn't.
But now we have a case in Manhattan because he didn't shut down the air travel from Iran, which is known to have a serious problem going on.
Yep.
I mean, it's just insane.
It's showing government
Yeah, go ahead.
And there's 3 million Chinese who go to America every year, back and forth. And let's talk about Europe. Probably the same amount there too. And so what you're going to see with the Chinese is the wealthy ones, and there's a fair amount of them, are leaving with their families. They could be carriers. I think that it's too late, to be honest. I think the cat's out of the bag at this point, and all we can do is react to it rather than be preemptive.
I agree. It is too late. We should have been banning sort of outside travel weeks ago.
Yeah.
But no.
Well, it'd be great to see if we had an emergency health czar. That's what I think. Look, Dr. Cottrell has a lot of support. I think that they need to literally petition DC and say, this is the man for the job. And not that I'm throwing you into politics, doctor, but you know what you're doing, and you've been ahead of the curve before.
I know how to save our country. I do know how to save it. But I don't think that the people that are in power want to save the country. There's the problem.
There's that dark side again.
Yeah.
Very dark, very evil.
Yeah, well.
But I mean, I have no problem stepping up to the country. It's just that my type of personality and my heritage. I mean, as I told Michael in a previous radio cast here,
right,
that my father's family immigrated to the United States in 1790. That was when George Washington was president, and we fought in almost every major war ever since. And we have my father was in the military, my brother was in the military, I was not in the military, but we have a long history of military service. My uncles were in the Navy. I mean, so we have long history of military service. And then obviously what I said about what happened on my mother's side, with the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But I just like it infuriates me to see so much incompetence in this country. While I know how to solve the problem, but my tack on this was try to raise the alarm and have people contact their representatives to get them moving and do their job. But if they can't do their job and they need to be pushed aside and I need to step up to the plate, then I'm willing to do it. But, the thing is we know that's never going to happen. They'll never happen. Do they want a nice Jewish boy from New York, telling them how to run their show? Because they really screwed up. They don't want that.
Yeah.
That'll never happen. I mean, it would be interesting to see if people would petition it. But why would they petition for me to help, and supplant Alex Azar, when they're not even willing to call their own representatives for their own local issues? It's never going to happen.
Yeah, there's going to be apathy when people die in rest homes or in prison populations. But there's going to be anger when it's your aunt or your uncle or, God forbid, your children. And so I think we're going to come to that inflection point at some point. And once again, it's too late. We're gonna have this is going to change everything about America. This is as you say, Dr. Cottrell, it's Chernobyl. Spanish influenza and Lehman Brothers all wrapped up in one.
It's a nice little hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. The 1918 flu took down the longevity rate of people by 10 years. Literally. And that only killed, less than 1 million people in the States. This could easily kill 10 million of the elderly. We have almost 50 million elderly in this country. So
it's only a matter of time.
Not to be, Debbie Downer, but it's serious.
It would be awesome if the president or a very close advisor for the president listens to this show and other shows that I've been on or my channel, and says, hey, Mr. President, you really need to listen to what Paul's saying, because it makes a lot of sense to prevent this from happening. Because if they keep on going down this road, they're going to have a catastrophe.
My goodness. And by the way, Doc, I had a question from Mr. Frank Bacon. He wanted to ask, how long do you think the virus can live on paper money?
Well, in the right environment, about 9 days.
9 days. That's
in the right environment.
That's a while. It's getting enough time to infect lots of people.
That leads us right into decashing, them wanting to do a decash. There's this movement of decashing, so people, have no recourse when there's negative interest rates. You see, use the pandemic to force the decashing that's been in the works since 2015. By the IMF, with their working papers, and you decash. So there's no coinage, there's no dollar bills, and everything's digital, and no one has the recourse to pull their money out of the bank. When right now we can vote by just taking our money out of the bank, right? Well, if you decash, you don't have that. You lose that voting power, and that's another erosion of our civil liberties. Another reason why to break down the banks, break the banks up.
What were you saying, Thomas? I couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
They can digitally delete you too. It's with full martial law, if they decide you're a voice that we don't want that out there, this is kind of Orwellian on steroids, but it's true, and that's what we're going. The first thing that attracted me to listening to Paul Cottrell was when he talked about the Biopatriot Act and realizing how far-reaching it could be. And, some of his audience got it, but a lot of them were mystified. I think it becomes clearer every day what he's talking about. And, it is right for him to be a medical Paul Revere, because, it's not the British are coming, it's the viruses, the pathogens, the global pandemics, plural.
Right. And and like I've said on Michael's show and many others, I wish I was wrong. I really do. you know, a lot of people, they say something and they get into their own, you know, theories, and they try to, you know, they have cognitive dissonance to just prove their own theory. You know, I'm looking for ways to be proven wrong. And it's just every day I wake up, you know, and it's like, it's just another data point that's pointing me into this overarching theory that we have serious problems coming. And it's deadly, and it's an erosion of our civil liberties. And I honestly, I feel depressed because of it, because I see it happening and I can't stop it, because in my mind, the only way to stop it is for us all to work together. But I don't see enough people getting up and doing something. There's a lot of people getting informed, but they're not, you know, it's passive. To be informed, that's a passive thing. But they actually do what we're doing, making content and trying to, you know, reach our representatives and trying to get people prepared, and you know, and teaching people, well, if the medical system breaks down and you can't get to a doctor, what can you take that is antiviral that, you know, grandma used to do, or what's, you know, in the nutraceutical realm or the homeopathic, you know, arena, that informs people. But there needs to be much more people out there that's more engaged to tell these the money people, the money changers, and the politicians, enough is enough. That we're going back to a pre-9/11 day, and we're not going to have this never-ending surveillance. But I don't see enough people willing to stand up and do that, and that is what makes me very depressed. I'm very sad that the state of this country is.
Yeah. It's there's rumors out there. You probably have heard them too, that the military is prepared for a much deeper impact with coronavirus than what the government admits to right now. So, of course, it's going to be the military that's ready to mobilize.
I had someone on my show, a military guy, all right, that's active duty, and he told me that they are trained that if someone was to break quarantine, or let's say people outside the quarantine area were trying to prevent the FEMA camps from happening, that they are trained to shoot on the citizens. And I said, well, you know, and he says, you know, if it's, let's say, a group of 10, and he said, yeah, we're trained to that. I said, if it's a group of 50,000, what would you do? And he said, we wouldn't shoot. So the point here is that if you have enough people involved, the military will stand down. But if it's just onesie twosies, you're going to get a bullet in your head. That's why I keep on saying we through numbers have power. But once we start thinking egocentrically, and we're not willing to help our neighbor and to be one, you know, one community, then we've lost the battle. And right now, the way I see it is no one in America really wants to do anything. They're worried about their own little selves.
Yeah, and we have to come together. We're a nation that supposedly was born of revolution, right? So why aren't we, you know, going back and taking the same approach that, look, Washington didn't, you know, he took one day off in 7 years for this nation. Right, we've all got to look to him and emulate him. You know,
well, the big difference is they didn't have 5G. You know, they didn't have GMOs and 5G and Wheel of Fortune.
That's true. What exactly is your take, Doctor, on 5G?
No, I think it's a technology. I think it's for two things to bring up here. It's a technology to be able to implement real-time surveillance of networks, where not only are they surveilling you, they're surveilling secondary and tertiary connections to you in real time. And then I think that 5G lowers the immune system. And possibly there's some evidence where children that are affected, you know, get these strange cancers. So it may be, you know, oncogenetic. But definitely surveillance technology, and definitely reduces your immune system.
Very interesting.
Still there?
Yeah, I thought Thomas was going to jump in there. Unless we lost him.
I think he's right. I think he's right. I'm just, what happens with me is I also get depressed. I'm a composer, doctor, and this is pretty much my métier. But I've spent most of my life studying these pestilences, and I started to sound the alarm in January and got the same, blowback that you did, which is, you're a fearmonger, right? You've got a much bigger platform than me. My music platform is about 20,000, but little alt channel that I do, I got limited feedback, but most of it was, calm down. And now it's coming true. And the reason why I was able to accurately predict this is because I have studied it since the 70s. And I've studied a number of pestilences. And this one, you're right. We have a weak underbelly right now, and much weaker than we did in 1918. We were hardened from war.
Exactly.
People were physically active. Yeah. The Industrial Revolution. Now people sit in front of their computers. We have a generation of kids who are going to have scoliosis because they're hunched over technology all day. We're cyber hermits, and we're going to go to rallies. How will this affect the political landscape? That's what I'm wondering. You've got both Sanders and Trump, and they believe in these large crowds. I think that could change within 6 weeks too. This thing is.
Well, these large crowds are going to spread the disease. And but in terms of a general election against Trump or Sanders, I think deep down inside America is not socialistic. We're more free market capitalism. So, and he's a flat out communist. So I mean, I don't think he's going to win.
He's a Bolshevik, and open borders. That's a killer. Right there, right? That's the worst thing in the world for America right now. So, I'm not a fan of Sanders, and plus the old adage, don't change horses in midstream. I think that Trump will react properly. I'm not a fan of Pence whatsoever, but I have a feeling that Trump is he won't show contrition, but he'll be Johnny on the spot, and he'll get the right guys in there because he does love the American people. And, he's not a professional politician. So, I don't worship.
That's true.
Any,
I mean, he's not a professional politician, but, there's a lot of things that he's done have been good things. And I applaud him for the things that he's done.
Yeah.
But in this case, I just think he's too late to the party. He could have been much more aggressive to prevent the contagion from happening. And it's surprising because he's a germaphobe.
That's true.
But yet he doesn't act like a germaphobe. I mean, it's so ironic.
Well, I mean, when he slept with, who he slept with, it is kind of ironic.
Stormy Daniels.
Right.
Yeah, I was joking with my friends that if we all invest in cryptocurrency right now, we're going to all end up like Howard Hughes. We'll be isolated and furiously washing our hands all day. We will all be Howard Hughes.
I already have OCD, and I wash my hands at least every other hour. I'm washing my hands. To be honest with you, that's part of the OCD.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing that, and also washing my face too.
That's important, yeah.
But I mean, I'm doing that like. I don't know, 5-6 times a day now. So my worry is that I'm in a situation where I don't have to travel that much outside the house, except for the dog. The dog has to be let out. But I'm worried if just taking the dog out and having the dog, contracting something.
The dog can, yeah.
Especially we have a case now in Manhattan.
Yeah, there's cases all over the place.
And it's all. I mean, Manhattan is the nexus. Because everyone comes into work and then they go mass transit to their home, either in Connecticut or New Jersey or Staten Island or Long Island or the Bronx or wherever. Brooklyn, and I am positive that we have hundreds of cases in New York now, just roaming around, and it's under the radar of influenza.
Yeah.
So
here's what I think is.
I may get sick, and then I'll be doing my YouTube channel as I progressively die from COVID-19.
Oh my!
Well, let me say something.
Anything for views, right?
Yeah, clickbait. So look at the hospitality industry. What is going to happen to that? Restaurants, catering, weddings, business retreats. That's going to be impacted like crazy too. No one is extrapolating what the future is going to look like. So I can understand the frustration.
I mean, right now, I have a friend that has a well-known Japanese restaurant in the Upper East Side, and her restaurant's doing pretty well at the moment. But there are restaurants in like Chinatown that they have lost about 50% of their revenue.
I could believe that. Yes.
No one's going
Wow.
to Chinatown.
Yeah, no one wants to get sick.
So it just depends on where you're talking about in Manhattan, where the economic downturn is because of this.
Yeah. This is just crazy. I have to tell you a story, Dr. Cottrell. So right as Lehman Brothers was failing, I was in Paris with Lee Iacocca celebrating his, 85th or 86th. And he rented out the Eiffel Tower and hired Alain Ducasse as the chef. And he had belly dancers, the whole 9 yards. He was a mentor and just one of the most wonderful human beings on the planet.
Nice. Okay. Fancy.
Yeah. It's a while ago. So
yeah, Iacocca, he was from Michigan. He was well known. Running Chrysler and saving Chrysler. He ran Ford, but he was pushed out because of the Ford family, and then he went to Chrysler to run that, and he basically saved Chrysler from bankruptcy when he got the special loan provisions from the federal government. So he was a well-known savior for Chrysler.
So and he also was the head guy for the '64 Mustang, which I think Debbie Reynolds and Frank Sinatra were the people who did the commercial for that. A beautiful car, wonderful car.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And the thing was that they wanted. What was interesting about Iacocca when he was launching the Mustang, originally they wanted it to be a longer car. Because at that time, cars were, they were just bigger cars. And they wanted to compete with Corvette. And Iacocca's answer to the Corvette was the Mustang. But he sat in the back seat of the prototype, and he said, nope, I want it shorter. And that, that brought the whole body line and to make the car more sexy looking and more, hot rod oriented.
Wow.
But because I was an automotive engineer, I'm into that.
Yeah, you're a car guy.
Cars, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mustang is a beautiful car. And what was interesting is that the body lines today of the Mustang go back to the 1960 body lines, and it was the 80s. Yeah. In the 80s, that was the terrible decade for the Mustang. It was just like it looked like a Ford Escort.
Oh, those were all cars in the 80s. They're all death traps.
And it was like, oh my God, that the 5-liter Mustang in the 80s was it had a nice engine, but the body, oh my God, the coupe is what I'm talking about. The soft top, the convertible was decent looking, but just that coupe was they called it the pig. Behind the scenes, automotive designers and engineers, we called it the pig because it just was had such a big butt at the rear end that it didn't have the body lines. But once Jay May came on board as the designer at Ford, he really brought back those 1960 lines back into the Mustang. It's a beautiful car now.
I'm looking at the 2020 model, the Ford Mustang. Do you like that car? The body, that is.
Oh yeah.
Looks
but I'm
nice.
more of a fan of the Corvette.
Okay,
honestly, right
Corvette
now.
man.
I think the Corvette once they put the headlights out, and it wasn't telescopic,
right?
Which was the body of the 2020 Corvette looks like a Ferrari, and that's where they should have gone.
Since we're on this subject,
it's a mid-engine.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's got that Ferrari look.
I gotta ask
So
you, Doctor.
let
I
me
don't think
butt
I've
in really-
ever. I don't think I've ever asked
if I
you.
could butt in really quickly, Michael.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just a quick little story. I'm with Lee Iacocca and a couple other people and his girlfriend, stunning 50-year-old woman named Jackie. We're in Siena, or outside of Siena, Italy, where he has a winery, and then we fly back on a Gulfstream back to the States. And as he's going through customs, he's got a big trench coat, and he's got perma hams, these huge perma hams. Customs caught him, but let him go because he was Lee Iacocca, an American icon.
Right.
Funny as hell.
Nice.
That's fine.
I was just going to quickly add to the conversation, Doctor. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about Elon Musk at all. What exactly is your take on Elon Musk and also his vehicles that he's been putting out?
Well, I mean, he's somewhat of a prodigy. He did very well in coding. That's where he, got his first, several millions of dollars. He's an idealist. He is an engineer by trade. I think it's mechanical engineering, maybe aerospace. I think it's mechanical, undergrad level. But he's a person that is self-taught. He can go into a library and teach himself many things. He's kind of like the Howard Hughes of today, with multiple industries. Now, in terms of Tesla,
Yes.
It's a great idea. He was pitching Tesla as a holistic approach with Solar City. You get your energy from the sun, from the solar panels on your house, and you charge your car, which happens to be a Tesla, and then you drive it around, right? It's a great idea for suburbia. It doesn't work for someone like me that's living in, a high density area like New York or Chicago.
Right.
Where do you plug it? Where do you plug it in? There's no infrastructure for that. So, but it works great for suburbia. So it's an ingenious idea. But here's the problem. Because he's a coder, he thought that you could just put a beta, a product out, and that the users will eventually get all the bugs out, and then the next version would be better. Well, you can't do that with cars because cars can kill people.
That's true.
Software doesn't kill people, all right? So he had too much of this Silicon Valley beta testing with the user base versus building more and more prototypes and doing adequate testing before you rolled out your production model. Not only that, it takes a while for new plants, to learn the fit and finish, to build a car with proper fit and finish. You can't just build a plant with new tooling and just snap things together. There's a finesse that happens when you're building a car. There's a lot of hand working to get that fit and finish properly. So if you look at a Tesla, the fit and finish isn't as good as it will be in the future. I mean, it will be a nice car in the future, but I would not buy a Tesla right now because of the fit and finish issue.
They're pretty goddamn expensive. And have you ever driven a Tesla?
No, I haven't.
They're
But I
pretty
have
fun.
seen a lot of them in New York. A lot of them in New York, and they're very quiet.
Trust me, they're very nice to drive. It's almost like a very, very quick go-kart is the best way to describe it.
Here's the problem from an engineering, a design perspective. I see the Tesla. There's a flaw in the design, especially when you're looking at it from, let's say, the Mustang or the Corvette. It feels like you're driving an iPad. It's an iPad with wheels.
Pretty much. It's a battery with
so
wheels, right?
Yeah, so you got this big iPad screen.
Yes, you do.
Controlling your car.
Yeah.
Right? But but there's something that connection between man and machine, where you want that motor to sound like a motor. You want it to roar.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to vibrate. The body, right? The chassis. And you want those dials because they kind of remind you of race cars.
You're a total muscle car guy.
Race cars don't have iPads. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yes.
It doesn't. He's too techy for. It would be a nice car if he went to, let's say, a cockpit module that was a little bit more like the Corvette or even the Viper. When you're talking about a Chrysler car, the Viper I thought was a beautiful design car, exterior and interior. So the dashboard of the Viper in a Tesla, I'd say, yeah, do it. But get away from that iPad with wheels.
That's funny.
It doesn't have the DNA of cars.
It's a little odd, yes. And
it has the DNA of an iPad.
Amazing. And how about the Cybertruck? My God. That looks like an abortion.
I just like I just thought it was a design abortion.
It's a very odd looking car.
It's like I don't think that I don't like it. I don't like the design of it at all.
Yeah, I'm not with it.
And and I knew it was a prototype, but you even look at the prototype, the fit and finish. When you look at the body panels and the door panels, it didn't. At certain angles, you can see that it doesn't match. There's like a step. It doesn't fully flow. And if you make these sharp, maybe I'm being too nuanced with all this, but when you have sheet metal that's really sharp bent, it's very hard to match quarter panels and the door correctly. And there's no sexy curvature on the body to get the reflective lines in the sun to really accentuate the body with this real flat, really sharp sheet metal bending technique that they're doing on that body. You can't add in the design reflective lines. A lot goes into body work. People probably don't realize this, but when you see the reflection line on a car, on the side of a car, there is at least about 300 or 400 hours spent on getting that reflection line, and people don't realize that. And he did, and because he quickly made that product, that prototype, you could see that he didn't put in that extra time for finesse. But maybe I'm just looking at it too deeply because I used to be an auto car guy.
That's okay. Yeah, these cars look rather unusual with their chosen frame, and I'm looking at the time now, and Doctor, it's been almost 2 hours, and I want to thank you tremendously for being a part of the program. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but it's always an honor and pleasure to have you here, and I had a great time. I had fun. I hope you had fun too, Doctor.
Yes, I enjoy coming on your show and talking to your other guests, and thanks for your contribution, Michael,
No
to
problem.
this particular problem that our country's facing. And thank you, Thomas, for your knowledge and your perspective.
And before you,
helpful.
yeah, and before
Thank
you go,
Doctor.
before
Thank
you
you.
leave, Doctor, any final parting words?
Well, I think the main theme here that we've been talking about for 2 hours is that we need to work together and act. We have to act. We can't just sit on the couch and passively, learn what's going on. We have to get engaged. And You know, I am concerned about our country and all of the dominoes that could fall that us three have been talking about on this program tonight. You know, hopefully the ones that listen right now and the ones that will listen later will feel emboldened to do something to save our country. We have a great country, but it's only when we are engaged can we maintain that great country.
I agree. We are too complacent with how we carry ourselves here in America. Very sheltered. So we don't worry until it happens to someone we know or it happens to us. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, hopefully people get off their ass and act a little bit smarter. We'll find out. But Doctor, once again, thank you so much for being a part of the program. I'm sure I'll talk to you again in the very near future.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cottrell. It's a pleasure to speak with you tonight.
Same here. Thank you, Thomas.
Take care, buddy. Mahalo.
Later.
Okay, take care, gentlemen.
And there
Good
he
night.
goes. Thomas, we're not done yet. Where are you going?
Oh, okay.
Oh, we're not done,
I was
Thomas.
going to go look on. I was looking for a 1973 Ford Falcon XB GT coupe. You know, the Mad Max car.
Yeah, that's a great car. So
That's what we're
Thomas,
gonna need.
So Thomas, you got to talk to me here a little bit before we shut this shit down. What's been going on with you? Why are you so popular online now? Why are there so many messages in my inbox talking about you?
Okay, a gentleman who was an actor died on May 13th, 2019 of last year, and there is suspicion that he was murdered, and there was a ton of evidence that they were trying to point to me as a pre-selected patsy, and so it's not so unusual if someone dies mysteriously that the guilty party or parties will try to run a distraction campaign. In fact, one of them is in the chat room right now.
Really?
I'm not going to mention that. Oh, yes. Absolutely. They're dogged. They chase me all over the place 24/7. This particular one is in coronavirus-ridden Long Beach. And she equates herself to a creature that is a predator made of cartilage.
Really?
So, oh yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the doctor's gone. I can smoke, right?
You could do whatever you want, my friend.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah,
he's really on top of it.
He really is. He really is. I was just surprised that you had so many fans that follow you around the internet and send me nice messages about you.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was nice. They seem to love you.
Yeah.
In a different way.
Well, I do have some good supporters, and they've been great. And look, the negative ones, by their constant negative efforts, it's only making the case that Steve Outram and others have been putting forth, which is this is obviously an operation, and I am Richard Jewell, with piano skills.
If memory serves correctly, you were also mentioned in an article, The Daily Beast, if I recall.
Yes, that's part of the operation.
What was that all about?
Will Summer. Well, okay, so there's a fellow named Manuel Chavez. He goes by the moniker Elusive Man, and his previous nom de plume was Defango. So he's known Will for a while, and they were part of a psyop called Q Killers. So what they wanted to do was to terrorize whoever were the patriarchs of Q, Praying Medic, and I forgot the other names. I was never a Q guy. But at any rate, they started Q Killers with a certain pack and some other people we're not going to mention. So that happened, and it preceded Isaac Cappy's death. Now, Isaac was a Q follower. He described Q as his dad, and he was hounded repeatedly because he was a whistleblower who was pointing to Hollywood and saying there has been a century-long cult of pedophilia there, which is true. You can look at Louis V. Mayer and what he was doing with 14-year-old, farm girls from the Midwest. You can look at the whole stage mother situation, and that definitely points to, women selling their daughters, their underage daughters.
Interesting.
So we know it from Howard Weinstein and, all that. It's still around. Yeah. I mean, look, in your experience, what did you think of Bill Cosby and Kevin Spacey 5 years ago?
Well,
icons.
Well,
right?
I kind of already knew they were pieces of shit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, you're from California.
Of
so
course.
I heard
most stories.
Wouldn't.
Well, I hear things. I kind of already knew what they were up to years ago. Many did.
Yeah. I knew it too. And I was living in Hollywood, working as a lead singer and also as a vice president of a company. And I saw things post up. I saw things as a teenager at nightclubs where it was normal for lecherous 45-year-old guys to be hitting up, 15-year-old girls with fake IDs.
Yep.
And here I was, 16 or 17, hanging out. Still remember seeing some of the bands there, Quiet Riot and Gang of Four. I'm dating myself, X. But, it was part of that culture. And there was one nightclub in particular, which was the Starwood. And so I had the fake ID, and you just see everything there. There was a lot of drugs there. I was not a druggie, so, I was a sober guy who got the girl.
And you're also a composer, by the way, and I've heard some of your music. Pretty good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
pretty good, man.
That's what I do.
I forgot to mention it to you in private, but you're pretty good on the piano there.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. It's, it is one of my few talents, but I've mastered it. I've been at it, for most of my life. I started out early.
For sure.
Too,
so Thomas, tell me about Seth Rich.
I don't know. I was never interested in Seth Rich. I know that, Comey came out and called out Hillary Clinton, basically said she was an unindicted criminal, but then he said no reasonable prosecutor would pursue it. And I think it was 6 or 7 days after that he was dead. I think he came out he came out on July 5th, and July 10th was the death of Seth Rich. But it was, not something I had a keen interest in. I know it did interest a lot of people. We had a client in Dallas who was fixated with it. And there was a man, this DeFango character, did all sorts of YouTube videos about it. He seemed pretty obsessed about it as well. For me, wasn't my bag. I was focused on Netanyahu and his corruption, and I ended up being right on that. He's right now going to have to, face the Supreme Court. I was focused on other issues, which I didn't want Hillary to win. So I'm happy that she lost. I think that we dodged a huge bullet with that. And I don't think Bernie has a chance.
He has no chance.
So, yeah.
No, he's not going to win.
But it's funny. Yeah, he's not. I think.
No, you got to be fucking stupid to think he's going to win, to be honest with you. He's not a part of the establishment. Biden is the chosen messiah.
Yeah, scary guy. Him and Hunter. And, the bottom line is this, is that the DNC has people in place. They have the Obama CIA right? They'd have the seventh floor of the FBI. However, Trump has the heart of the people. And there are a lot of people who, put every roadblock that they could in front of him, and he defied all odds. He is that bull in the china shop. So that's why I wanted to see him win. Now, I haven't always been happy with everything that he's done, but when are you ever completely happy with any president? Maybe William Harrison. I mean, he had the dignity to go into a coma right after his inaugural speech. That's a joke.
I know. I was just imagining it in my head.
Yeah.
My goodness.
There's a guy named Jim Camera that I think would make an excellent president. He's in the chat right now, and he's a towering figure. I think 6'3" or 6'4". Very, very smart, and he is a troll slayer. He can devastate someone in one sentence.
Really?
So, oh yeah, got to look at Jim Camera. He's a rock star.
We'll have to keep that in mind. And by the way, what do you know about Isaac Cappy?
Okay, Isaac Cappy came on the scene in July of 2018. He was pointed out to me by a guy named Brian Word, who goes by Duality of Man. And Isaac came out, as you know, pointing fingers at Seth Green and Claire Grant. And so at that point, I knew some YouTubers who had, they were considered up-and-comers or influencers. So one of them was Nathan Stoltman. I said, hey, this guy is out of Hollywood, and he's making some huge accusations. And he was immediately interested. And, no one knew how that interview would go. But for whatever reason, it became huge. And it led to all these other things. And so that's, it's interesting that you asked that, because I think that in a circumstantial way, that's part of the reason why I was selected as a patsy to point fingers at, because the people who gatekeep for these pedophiles blame me and say that Thomas Schoenberger made Isaac Cappy famous. He needs to go.
So people are blaming you.
Died.
Let me get this straight. People are blaming you for the death of Isaac Cappy. Is that what you're telling me?
Exactly.
Really?
They blamed me for making him famous when I didn't. I simply referred him to Nathan Stoltman of Lift the Veil. And then
is that the guy who is that the guy who wears diapers?
That is the guy. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, but he's Nathan can do some very good shows. I'm not going to cut him down. And
I didn't mean to cut him down.
With Isaac.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut him down. It's just that's the only memory I have. The only thing in my mind that I've ever seen of the guy is when he was wearing diapers. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect him out there.
No,
by the way.
No. You're fine. I know that Pampers pulled their corporate support from Lift the Veil after Isaac's death, and I found that curious. That's also a joke, Michael.
Yes, trust me, I'm smiling the whole time. I've been smiling for a long time now.
Okay. So yeah, as far as Isaac, he died May 13th. We all learned about it on May 14th. I'm immediately attacked by this Stefango character. Next day, one of his friends, a guy out of Australia, Peter Priest, Ella High Priest, they call him, also calls me, threatens me, and then it was just a deluge of attacks, and they have not ceased. So I get them repeatedly. They've called family members. This is weaponized grade troll. And they also attack my friends. They attacked hoax wars. They've attacked the potential presidential candidate, Jim Camera. They've attacked Steve Outram, who's this tremendous evidence-based researcher. They've attacked Wyatt Earp, who's Australian researcher. It has been anybody who supports me or wants to hear my side of the story or has a nice thing to say about me. They descend upon them like honey badgers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you sound like a decent guy. I don't think you've killed anyone.
Not lately.
Not lately. Okay.
No, literally, I can count the number of people I killed on my right hand. Well, pardon my left. No, no, I don't kill people.
Obviously.
Number one, and number two, I didn't know Isaac that well. I never met Isaac. He died on May 13th in a place called Belmont, Arizona, and this wacko. Kelly Giannini. She goes by Shark Belly Kelly.
She's here now.
Let me give you. She's here.
She's here now.
So let me give you an example of what. Yeah.
So right now she's in the chat room right now saying Isaac loved me as a good friend and he knew Thomas was an infiltrator.
She met him once at a garage sale and then went to pick him up when he came from Australia. He was unaware of it. He was not pleased. So she's created this fantasy which looks like she was setting him up for murder. She has a deceased husband who was a career criminal who was given a 12-year sentence for kidnapping and was a member of the Warlocks biker gang. And this woman is a monster. She has told the world, hey, Thomas has a black Mercedes. He was in Arizona at the time. Total bullshit. I wasn't in Arizona when Isaac Cappy died. I had no knowledge of it. I had never met him. And we can certainly connect her to players who are behaving very suspiciously. So as far as Shark Belly Kelly, you know, the one interesting thing is she's in Long Beach and she's an older person, and Long Beach is, you know, the shipping port of LA.
That's
so,
right.
You know, she better wear a mask. You know, I think that'd be a good idea to put a mask on the shark.
Don't go outside. Be like that guy in the movie Bubble Boy. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Do you remember the Seinfeld episode with that too?
I sure do. Oh my.
That's pretty funny.
So Thomas, you know, we've been on here a while. We're sort of winding down. And, you know, Thomas, what are you going to tell all these individuals out there, the ones that are in the chat room, the ones who dislike you so much and have been saying very naughty things about you? What would you tell those individuals right now, since they're all listening?
I have nothing to say to them because anything that I've said before is only prompted attacks. They know what they are. And they know what they do. So I'm here. I got a wonderful discussion with Dr. Cottrell today. We talked about matters of great import rather than psychological / attacks on a person they've never met. So
I hear you.
I think I'm following my cause, which you know, as you know, Paul and I were probably the two people on YouTube to raise the alarm when there was under 50 deaths. You know, him because of his precocious medical gifts, and for me because of my historical interest in specialties. So it was great that you put us both on there. As far as these trolls, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter where I go. They will chase me. But
they're going to follow you.
Yeah, this is what they do. You know, it no longer bothers me anymore, and I don't give them energy. I didn't give them a lot of oxygen. Now, as far as Shark Belly, I think she should have oxygen. I think she should be beached. She can get all the oxygen she wants.
My God. Well, Thomas,
right?
I want to thank you for being a part of the program as well. It's been a great time talking to you. I hope you also had fun tonight.
I had a blast, Michael. You know,
nice.
I've heard so many good things about you, and you've got a huge fan and jam on, Jared T. Swift,
Right.
who, pointed out just how gifted you are. You know how to write, you know how to do a good interview, and you understand the tempi of your interviewee.
Well, that's very nice of him to say that.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and I can give you his PayPal address. He wanted me to read it off air, but I don't think I should.
Okay.
That's a joke, Michael.
Yes, I know. Well, Thomas, again, any final words before I let you go? Anything you want to say? The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah. Look, as far as these malcontent doctors, it's not going to matter anymore. We're going into a brave new world. And so all these people who are trolling, well, you're going to be facing real trolls on the streets. And I think that people are better served preparing for what's coming down the pike.
My God. Well, Thomas, this is the part where we part ways. And again, I want to thank you tremendously for being a part of the program. Loved having you here. We will definitely have to do this again, and I'm sure we will.
Sounds great, Michael. I really appreciate it. And buona notte, as they say in Italian.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon, Thomas.
Thank you.
Good
Okay,
night.
bye-bye, Michael.
Good night. God bless. I love telling people God bless, even though I'm an atheist. I always thought that was pretty fun. Once again, I want to thank all of you for being a part of the program, too. You in the chat room, I see all of you. How time just flies by in an instant. My God. Remember, you can get a hold of me during the show via Twitter at Michael Decon. Send me a message there, and I'll try to do my best to respond. And don't forget, if you're a fan or listener of this program and want to help fund the program, sign up to Patreon. Patreon.com/Michael Decon. And that's where you'll find premium content. It's pretty goddamn good, I promise. Patreon.com/Michael Decon. Only if you want to help. We're always trying to help. International listeners out there, thank you so much for your support as well. Now, that chat was pretty goddamn fascinating, and I will return very, very soon. I promise. Remember to stop shaking hands with strangers and start boosting those immune systems. The biological warfare is ahead. Stay safe, everyone, no matter where you are on this island Earth. I'm Michael Decon, and with that said, the world is a mysterious place, and life itself is a mystery. Until next time, good night, everybody.